By the beginning of the 1970s, Northern California had changed. Not physically. The roads were still there. The diners still opened at sunrise. Teenagers still drove into quiet places searching for privacy. Newspapers still landed on doorsteps every morning. But something invisible had entered daily life. People no longer trusted silence, because silence had become suspicious. A parked car on an empty road didn't feel romantic anymore. It felt dangerous. A stranger's face in a crowd lingered longer than it should. A knock at the door after dark suddenly felt wrong. The Zodiac had done something few criminals ever achieve. He had turned uncertainty into fear, and fear into routine. Inside police departments, the pressure was becoming unbearable. Files stacked higher every week. Maps covered walls. Photographs, witness statements, timelines, phone calls, handwriting samples. Everything pinned together like fragments of a nightmare investigators couldn't wake up from. Every detective believed the same thing. The answer had to exist somewhere. A mistake, a pattern, a witness who remembered one detail nobody else noticed, but every lead seemed to collapse just before certainty. It was like chasing someone who understood investigation almost as well as investigators themselves. And that possibility terrified them. Because what if Zodiac wasn't just lucky? What if he was smart? Psychologists began studying the letters. Not the crimes first, the language, the rhythm, the structure. Because words reveal things people don't realize they're revealing. And the more experts analyzed the Zodiac's writing, the stranger the picture became. The killer sounded educated, but inconsistent, confident, but deeply insecure, arrogant, yet obsessed with recognition. His letters shifted between calm intelligence and childish provocation. One moment he sounded calculating, the next emotionally immature, almost desperate to prove superiority, as if underneath the mystery lived someone who desperately needed attention, someone who feared being ignored more than being caught. But then came a question investigators couldn't shake. What if the Zodiac enjoyed the chase more than the crimes? Because the killings themselves were terrifying, but the communication afterward felt almost rehearsed, like chapters in an unfolding story. Each message arriving just when public fear began fading, each letter reigniting panic, each cipher restarting obsession. It was manipulation, not random chaos. And suddenly investigators realized something disturbing. The Zodiac wasn't reacting to the media. He was controlling it. Then came San Francisco. October 1969. A taxi driver named Paul Stein picked up a passenger. Ordinary moment. Routine ride, nothing unusual. At least that's how it began. The city moved around them like any other night. Streetlights reflecting on wet pavement. Distant sounds of traffic humming through neighborhoods. No one noticed the passenger. No one looked twice. Because monsters rarely announce themselves. They blend in. Quietly. Patiently. Waiting for the ordinary moment to become irreversible. When police later arrived at the scene, confusion spread immediately. At first, dispatch information contained errors. Descriptions were misunderstood. Witness reports mixed together. And somewhere inside that confusion, the killer slipped through. Not running, not panicking, walking. That detail haunted investigators. Walking. Imagine the confidence required. A city searching, police nearby, chaos unfolding, and yet somehow the Zodiac moved through it calmly enough to disappear, as though escape had already been planned before the crime even happened. But then something chilling happened. The Zodiac wrote again, and this time he proved he had been there. Included with his communication were details only the killer could know. Evidence connected directly to the crime. It wasn't just confession anymore. It was demonstration, proof. Almost as if he wanted police to understand one thing clearly. I was here, and you still couldn't stop me. The public reaction exploded. Fear spread faster than facts. Every strange man became suspicious. Every odd neighbor suddenly seemed possible. Rumors spread through cities. Parents warned children. Teenagers stopped driving to isolated roads. Businesses changed routines. The Zodiac had become more than a criminal. He had become a psychological infection. Not because everyone believed he would target them, but because nobody knew who he might target next. That uncertainty changes behavior. It changes cities. Then the theories began. And theories are dangerous, because once people fear the unknown, they start creating certainty where none exists. Some believe Zodiac was military, the precision, the confidence, the cryptic codes. Others thought he worked in law enforcement. How else could he stay ahead? Some imagined a genius hiding in plain sight. Others pictured someone painfully ordinary, a neighbor, a teacher, a lonely man nobody noticed. Which possibility is more frightening? A criminal mastermind, or someone forgettable enough to disappear completely? And then there was Arthur Lee Allen, a name that surfaced repeatedly. He fit certain behavioral patterns, had suspicious timing, made unsettling comments. Enough details existed to attract serious attention. But there was a problem that investigators hated most. Suspicion is not proof. Evidence remained incomplete, inconsistent, always almost enough, but never enough, and almost doesn't solve murder cases. Meanwhile, the letters slowed again. Not entirely, but enough to create confusion. Had Zodiac stopped, moved away, been arrested for something unrelated, died? Or was he simply watching, waiting? Because predators often disappear not when they're finished, but when conditions change, and investigators feared one possibility most of all. What if Zodiac wasn't gone? What if he was evolving? Then came one of the strangest developments in the entire case. Years passed, but letters occasionally resurfaced. New messages, possible connections, unconfirmed victims, claims that stretched beyond Northern California. Some believe Zodiac's confirmed murders represented only a fraction of reality. Others believed he exaggerated everything, taking credit for crimes he never committed. And here lies the deepest problem with manipulation. When a liar mixes truth with fiction, eventually nobody knows where reality ends. By now, investigators faced a horrifying possibility. The Zodiac case might never close, not because the clues didn't exist, but because time itself was becoming the enemy. Memories faded, witnesses aged, evidence degraded, and every passing year strengthened the killer's greatest weapon: distance. Yet despite all this, one mystery remained unsolved above all others. The cipher, the one nobody could crack. The infamous 340 cipher, sent in 1969, mocking investigators, taunting anyone who tried to solve it. For decades it remained silent, like a locked room inside the Zodiac's mind. And then, more than 50 years later, something impossible happened. Someone finally opened the door.